I'm Clark Pena, and welcome to the Advocate's Corner. You know, many times we think when someone is incarcerated, how do they get out? The American bail bond agent is a very important part of that process. And to find out who they are, and what do they do, we are honored to have a very special guest. We have Michelle Esquenazi, who happens to be the president of the New York State Bail Bondsmen's Association, and also one of the leading bail bondsmen organizations or companies in New York City, New York State?
In New York.
In New York, Empire Bail Bond. Thank you, Michelle, for being here with us today.
It is my pleasure.
A lot of questions.
Okay, go.
And a lot of concerns.
Sure.
What happens when an individual gets collared, gets arrested? Mm-hmm. Where does the bail bond agent take place within that process?
Okay, so in New York State, for example, in order for an arrest to be valid, that offender would have to see a judge and be arraigned within 24 hours. Mm. So let's say that offender goes in front of the judge. He's charged with something like, I don't know, felony robbery, and he's got an extensive record. The judge would weigh in all the facts. The prosecutor would ask for a certain amount of bail. Usually, over about 90% of the time in New York, legal aid arraigns that defendant, and they argue back and forth as to what the bail amount should be, and then the judge ultimately decides, because bail in the state of New York is done through judicial discretion. And the judge fixes a certain amount. So he believes in this specific case, let's say the defendant needs $15,000 worth of bail to return to court. So bond would be set at $15,000, and there'd also be what we call a cash alternative. So the consumer or the family member could go purchase a $15,000 bail bond policy, or they could pay maybe $7,500. It's usually set in half derivatives to the state. And
when are you activated? Who calls you? Is it the family? Is it their lawyer? Who activates you?
Well, sometimes it's a combination of both. So, you know, for the majority of the time, it's a loved one, it's a family member that's concerned. They reach out to the bail bond industry. Sometimes they've worked with, let's say, my company, for example, in the past, and they'll just come directly to Empire. They'll ask what it is that they need, and we'll go over that with them, and then we do the underwriting, and then the bond gets created for that defendant. And
is there a risk involved, especially for the bail bonds person?
Well, the bail bond agent throughout the United States of America is wholly liable. So we do have a tremendous amount of skin in the game. So there is risk, and we are amazing risk assessors, if you will. So I can look at a defendant and I can tell you in about 3 seconds whether or not that defendant is going to come back.
And is there a way, like, let's say, you think this person is not going to come back, do you still take that risk, or do you opt out?
Well, you know, opting out is not what we do. What we would likely do in the event that the defendant was a very strong risk of flight is we would ask for much more collateral in that case. But if, for example, that defendant has disobeyed the order of the court in the realm of his history before and has a tremendous amount of warrant activity, then clearly that defendant is not going to be returning to court.
Have you had that issue in the past with the defendant that skips?
Sure. I mean, it happens. For Empire, it happens less than 2% of the time.
Wow.
But
that's very good.
Yeah, but for the bail industry as a whole throughout the United States, I would say it probably happens less than 10 to 5% of the time.
And when they skip, does that become a responsibility of law enforcement, local law enforcement, or you guys have to go out there and
yeah, so it
bring this person
really
in.
doesn't become the responsibility of law enforcement. There are times when a defendant skips bail and he's charged with a violent felony, and let's say, for example, NYPD is extremely interested in apprehending that defendant. Then much of the time the detective would contact us directly, and we would work in conjunction with NYPD, which happens often, happens every day for us throughout the city of New York. We sometimes have a lot better information than NYPD has. They have the general pedigree. We know where the baby's mama lives.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Someone will talk.
Yeah, so
Someone
for the most, we also have different liberties than NYPD does in terms of being able to enter the premise and things like that. So we do work in conjunction nationally with law enforcement and return a tremendous amount of fugitives per diem throughout the whole entire United States of America while everybody is sleeping.
While everyone is sleeping. That's the best time to get them anyway, though, right?
Yeah, pluck them out of the bed at 3 in the morning.
3 in the morning. Law enforcement people that usually retire, I don't know if it's a myth or not, become bail bond agents. Is that something that's true, or?
Well, I mean, we do have a tremendous amount of retired law enforcement within the bail bond industry. We also have a tremendous amount of, military, honorably discharged military members, veterans. And we have, people that have worked within the realm of the industry just for so many years, and we know enough to know. That's me.
Tell us a little bit about Empire, because you guys are the top.
Yeah, Empire is the largest bail bond company in New York. I founded Empire over 2 decades ago. I was a single mother on public assistance, and I thought maybe I could do this bail bond thing because I worked for a bail bond guy. I ran his office, but I quick found out that he was very corrupt, and I'm not. So I thought I could probably do this, and I was right.
Right, and I do definitely know that you're a go-getter, you're a strong woman, and that's what was really so important to have you here today. New York State Bail Bondsman Association. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
I founded NYSBA in 1997. In 97, the reason that I founded it was because we had some bad operators within the industry, and I really sought to maintain the professionalism and the integrity of our industry. And our first president was Jack Robbins, who is an all-time icon out of Brooklyn, him and Irving Newman. And we never really had too much issue. Most of our regulatory body is the New York State Department of Financial Services, so I would be working in conjunction with them to kind of report on bad operators. But in 2013, when our former Chief Justice Jonathan Lippman attacked the bail bond industry and called us odorous and said that he needed to revamp the entire bail bond industry, that's when I had to kind of reboot and put everybody back together and go up to Albany and start a lot of lobbying and things of that nature, and they constantly are seeing the redhead all the time.
Don't I know?
Yes,
Don't I know?
they do.
Where do you feel that you're getting most of your pushback from? The city elected officials or the state?
Well, I think right now it's New York City. It's very clear that it's New York City. I mean, obviously, Mark Viverito floated her $1.4 million bail fund program. Cyrus Vance gave $17.8 million to Mayor de Blasio out of criminal asset forfeiture money, which is really supposed to be slated for police and vests and things like that. So I thought that was a little ironic because that's historically never happened, that the actual district attorney is concerned with the release of offenders. But nevertheless, it's an abysmal failure. And the reason that it's an abysmal failure is because there's no accountability. The bail bond industry is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. This is what we do. This is all we do. So for government to come along and think that they can do what we do is just a failure in and of itself.
So the government wants to get into the the bail bonds industry, I guess, right?
Well, I guess the government found out, like in any other industry, that we make money. So I guess they're interested in a slice of that pie, which is not particularly surprising. But they seek to abolish our industry. And it's not something that either candidate is talking about in the election, which I find quite disturbing. We all do.
Right. But they're not talking about a lot of other things as well.
Right.
So, you know, that's something that does the New York State Bail Bondsman Association. Are you involved in lobbying or supporting candidates that will, you know, fight your fight?
Well, we absolutely have to support Donald Trump. Although he has quite a big mouth, because he's a New Yorker, and I guess he just doesn't know enough to know. And I'm a New Yorker, I'm a kid from Brooklyn, so I have a very big mouth too. So I kind of get the big mouth thing, but he's very pro-private industry, and that's who we are. And he really kind of does understand the insurance industry, which we find refreshing. If you take a look at what he's saying about Obamacare, what he's saying to me makes perfectly good sense. He's saying take down the borders of the insurance companies and let the insurance companies start to compete with one another and open up free trade, and then start the competition process for premium. So in other words, Empire Bail Bonds is an agency. Empire Bonding and Insurance Co. is our insurance company. We self-insure ourselves.
Okay.
We exist only in the state of New York. With Donald Trump's plan, he would rip down the New York border and say, okay, well, if you have enough capital and surplus to operate in New York, you have enough to operate in Minnesota, in South Dakota, in Florida. And so basically, we would be opening up, you know.
So it would be more blanketed.
Right. And that's what would happen, you know, that's what he's talking about with Obamacare. I don't think that the majority of Americans really get it, because I don't think that, especially Democrats, and I'm Latina, so I love my people, but I don't think that they understand. I don't think they know enough to know.
What would happen? What would happen if your industry is run by, you know, government? How would that impact those that are incarcerated?
It would impact everybody. It would impact law enforcement. It would impact you as a citizen, just a regular citizen. It would impact the offender. It would impact all of us. It would severely affect public safety, which would be thing one.
Wow.
So that's probably the biggest initial issue, is because, like, for example, with the supervised release program that they have, one of their ways of monitoring defendants is for that defendant to text message the not-for-profit entity that controls them. My offenders are a little too savvy for that. I have a big news flash for the city of New York. They have throwaway phones. That's not going to happen. It's not going to work. You know, I beg to differ.
We're coming right back with more Advocates Corner. Welcome back. We're speaking here with Michelle Esquenazi. She's giving us a lot of insight as to the bail bond industry. Michelle, give us a little bit of your background, and how do you get into this? You look like a model. You should have been modeling.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Wow, that's a pretty big compliment. I was a single mother of 3 very young children. I was going to school day and night to become a paralegal, and I had a cousin that somehow married this bail bond guy, and he said to me, do you want to come and interview at my place in Manhattan? And of course I did, because I was on public assistance, and I did. I interviewed, I got the job, and then I was running the office within a few weeks, and I kind of noticed that, like I said, he was pretty corrupt, and I thought, I think I could do this. And I I made a deal with this bail bond guy, I got myself licensed, and boom.
Well, and there's a lot of other folks out there that are out there that you see more on TV than any others. I know that you were on TV for quite a while. Is that something that is helpful for the industry, do you think, or should the industry be a little bit more quiet? And
You know, I mean, at this point, because our industry is so under attack, we would like to, you know, kind of have a better image than, you know, boobs and blonde hair. So, you know, there's a certain truth to that. What we do is, a lot of the times, is very gritty. It's not simple. It's not average. I'm not an average mom. I mean, I have 4 children, but what I do is not normal. I mean, but it's my normal.
Right.
But we would like to kind of be perceived as the professionals that we are, because throughout the nation, we don't all have red curly hair, we don't all have hourglass figures, we don't all look like a certain one particular look. And I think because television has, you know, put that forth, that's what everybody thinks.
Absolutely. A lot of people that believe that's the bail bonds industry is just that we're seeing on other stations. And we were together not too long ago, and something I noticed, you're always on the phone. Is that part of the industry? You're always on the move.
You know, I think that maybe for other people, like maybe they're not always on their phone, but for me, my phone is my hand. If I don't have my phone, I'll lose my mind. I'm constantly being called and texted and emailed, and you know, also Empire works with all the unions throughout New York, and that's also very important to me, so I have to maintain contact. God forbid an officer ever gets arrested, I can't answer the union back a day later. I have to answer the union back right now. Otherwise, what value am I? And
you always come through for police officers, for correction officers, without mentioning any specifics. You know, do they call you constantly?
Well, I mean, thank God. I mean, officers are really not the majority pool of who's getting arrested in New York. But when an officer does get arrested, I mean, as the president of the company, I consider that code red. I think it takes extreme precedence over almost anything else because it has so much exposure. You know, an officer has to go into a different jail to be housed so that he or she doesn't get hurt. And there's just so much that surrounds, and in the age of hating cops, you know, which is where we are, you know, many officers are getting arrested, maybe when they shouldn't be getting arrested. And so that's a big concern for Empire. So we want to make sure that we move that officer directly to liberty. So that's part of what we do.
And then throughout that process, does it take time? You know, the bail is like set by the judge, correct?
Right, and then I'm in court.
You're in court.
I am in court, and I am handing up that bond directly to the judge the second the bail is set, because I've already done the paperwork, usually, you know, the night before, or you know, maybe in the wee hours of the morning, and that officer is moved to immediate liberty.
Immediate liberty? What you're talking about? An hour, 2 hours?
Yeah. Immediate liberty.
How about for a civilian? Is it the same?
That does not happen.
How does it work for a civilian?
Well, what happens usually when a civilian gets arrested, you know, they go through booking. So they have to go through, let's say, the Tombs in Manhattan. They go through central booking, they get arraigned, then they're brought to the Tombs. Bail is set, same offender, $15,000. Mommy and grandma come into Empire, they put up the home, they pay $1,160, which is the state standard premium for a $15,000 bond. Most people think bail is 10%. In New York, although we have the highest rents and the highest taxes, we also operate at a national low premium rate. We operate at a 6% premium rate. So here we are, the parents pay $1,160, that's all done, the bond is created, my agent takes it into court, says, you know, Judge, here's the bond for so-and-so. Do you swear, raise your right hand, what company are you with? Do you swear that this is all true? Yes. The clerk creates a release document. In New York, we call it a cut slip. It's then sent to corrections. It has a seal. It indicates to corrections that that offender has made bail. and then they are then ordered to discharge that defendant. Now, sometimes it could take the city of New York 3 hours, and sometimes it could take them 16 hours.
Wow. Even when the bail is set?
Yes,
it can
and
take that amount of
that
time?
has a lot to do with sometimes if there are inmates fighting, if something happens, let's say on Rikers Island, for security purposes, they have to shut down, the booking process, and that happens. So, you're at the mercy of the, Department of Corrections.
After that defendant is released, when do you see him again? Do you see him at
Within
return date?
24 hours.
You see him within 24 hours? They have to, report to your office?
They have to report in.
To your office?
They have to report into an Empire location. We take a picture of them, several. We take a picture of their tattoos or surgical scars. And then they have to sign all their jurisdictional paperwork. They're duty bound to stay in the state of New York. And then they have to check in on a weekly basis physically. Failure to comply, it's kind of like baseball in my world. Failure to comply is a 1, 2, 3 strike, you're out. So then they're reincarcerated if they can't comply.
Because you pull your bond back.
We'll
correct?
revoke the bail
You'll
bond.
revoke the bail, and then you guys go chase them, or?
Well, a lot of the times it's not a chase. A lot of the times, they're home just being non-compliant, or, a lot of the times it's not a chase. Sometimes it's a chase, but it's a rare occasion that it's a chase. A lot of the times it's just these young offenders, and you give them 1 chance, 2 chances, 3 chances, and they just don't. They think they're holier than thou, and they don't want to come in. They feel like it's a personal thing or something, but it's not. So.
Do you face a lot of recidivists, people that are recommitting?
Recidivism prevails no matter what any government entity would ever seek to mention. Yeah.
So, and you, just because they've been in and out of jail 2 or 3 times, you don't hold that against them, right? You'll bring them back out.
No, we have offenders that are out of jail on 3 or 4 bonds. That's very common.
And if that individual skips, hopefully not, you lose all 3 bonds?
We would lose all the money, yes.
Wow, that is a risk.
It is a risk. It's a risky business, but one of the best parts of surety bonding is what we call the circle of love. So who comes in to indemnify you is mommy and auntie, right? Honestly, they have a lot more at times to fear from mommy, grandma, and auntie than they do from the bail bond queen. So sometimes they're, that in and of itself is the really big part of the relationship nationally between the bail bond industry and the family. So the family is constantly reporting back. Little Johnny is supposed to go with mommy to church on Sunday, and he's not going. So we call him in, we have a come to Jesus meeting, and lo and behold, little Johnny's going back to church with mommy on Sundays. So sometimes the bail bond, much of the time, the bail bond can be extremely effective in behavior modification of defendants.
There's another issue that you just involved yourself with, a partnership with the Treatment Partners of America, which is something very special. Explain a little bit about that.
Well, the bail bond industry is proud to announce, NYSPA is proud to announce its alliance with the Treatment Partners of America. One of the biggest problems that we've seen in the past 5 years or so is New York's heroin epidemic. And it's really crosses any kind of financial issue at home. You could be rich, poor, it doesn't really much matter. Children are dying every single day in New York. So what happens is when they become age of majority at 18 years old, their parents have no control over them. They cannot put them into programs. NYPD can't do anything. Even though they call NYPD, help me, NYPD has no control. So what happens is they bond out their daughter. Their daughter is now going around the neighborhood to steal from everybody's homes to get money so she can get heroin or oxycodone. And now the family's on the 3rd bond. Now the 3rd bond is $100,000 because now the daughter has really done something heinous. So now they have to make a decision. What are they going to do? And they want to put her into a program. What do? We then call the Treatment Partners of America, and they send a sober transport representative right to the jail to pick her up and take her from the jail directly to a rehab program, and they stay in touch with us the whole time. It's actually a beautiful partnership.
That sounds like a really great deal all around.
All the way around.
All the way around, absolutely. What took so long?
Well, it was just reaching out and knowing the right people. They needed us, that we needed them, and there it was, and we were introduced. It was amazing.
I think it will also help lower the recidivism rate.
We hope so. We hope that it also reduces death, because we now get so many more death certificates than we ever got before.
Because of
Because of heroin overdose.
Well, it's really amazing the work that you do.
Thank you.
And your partners do. There's so many. How many you would say throughout the nation?
20,000 bail agents.
20,000 bail agents. That's excellent. You guys are doing great work. And tax-free, is it?
Tax-free. Private industry.
Now that's important.
Very important.
That's very important. Well, I want to thank you.
It's my pleasure.
For taking the time to come here and explain to all of us. Before we go, how can we reach you?
You can reach me at 877-EMPIRE NOW, or you can reach me at Empire Bail Bonds. I'm always available.
Outstanding, outstanding. Continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Advocate's Corner. I'm Clark Peña. Hasta la próxima.